Okay, just so you guys can see, I've got my little list here. I'm gonna randomize it and that'll be the order. I've got like software that listed all your names.
Software engineer says.
Just for the people who are on Zoom and walking in, welcome to the 2023 Presidential Candidate Debate. Thank you so much for coming. There's quite a few people on Zoom, but there's also some people here in person. I just explained to the candidates, but we'll give each candidate 5 minutes to present their platform. And then we will open the floor to questions from the audience. I also have a couple of questions in case it's slow to get started. Yeah. So the order for the initial platforms will be Sarah, Sam, Kevin, then Samyukta. So that'll be the order, and we'll like rotate through. So then next for the first question, it will start with Sam, then Kevin, then Samyukta, and Sarah will go to the bottom, and we'll rotate through like that. Alrighty, Sarah, I'm just getting the timer ready.
Okay, before I start, I want to check if you guys can hear me, the on Zoom and off Zoom people.
You're good here.
Okay, all right. And then are you just gonna like start it when I start talking?
Yeah, whenever you're ready, and then I'll give you that 30-second countdown.
Like
Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Do you want changes? I will make it happen. Do you want the ESS to actually represent the student needs and desires? Come talk to me. Do you want an accountable leader who will follow through on their promises? I am the right candidate for you. Good evening. My name is Sarah Keegan. I am a second-year biomedical engineering student, and I am delighted to be here tonight running for president for my third year on the ESS Council. In previous years, I was the first-year rep, where I was the chair and president of the first-year council, and I led our student team to accomplish our collective goals. And I am currently the vice president internal, where I advocate for engineering students to the dean and faculty members, and I am the engineering undergraduate student representative. Tonight, I will talk about how I will create an uplifting and supportive community, how I will increase student engagement, and how I will instill pride in UVic engineering. To create an uplifting and supportive community, I will focus on the onboarding of new and returning members and computer science students when our society includes them. This year, I was in charge of the onboarding of the first-year council team, and I did so in a unique, team-building, fun, engaging way that made sure that the first-year council felt as though they were a team and part of the ESS right at the get-go. I will prioritize this year. Another thing I will do to make sure that the ESS is an uplifting and supportive community, I will make sure to promote myself and the ESS on our website, social media, and around campus to encourage all students to reach out with any concerns, ideas, or questions. I will also complete regular check-ins with volunteers and focus on accomplishing each person's individual and role goals. And I will also focus on building up the priorities of newer roles. To increase student engagement, I will host smaller, focused student-suggested events, more regular, such as like bi-weekly events. Currently, the ESS has a few very, very successful events that are less often. I want to focus on having more regular events too. I want to increase the ESS presence on campus right from the beginning of an engineering student's degree. So I want to be involved in orientation and especially involved in the first-year council and first-year reps endeavors to make sure that the first-year engineering students feel supported and involved in the ESS, so then that momentum will carry through their degree. I was the main council support member for the first-year rep and first-year council this year, and I noticed how much of a difference it made when they were planning events or coming up with ideas or just asking questions about how things work. It was really easy for them to have someone there to support them, and I will continue to support the first-year council and then the VPI supporting the first-year council this year. I will also develop support groups for younger students to be paired with a more experienced student of the same discipline, minority, or background. This year as VPI, this was a suggestion I received multiple times from first and second year students saying they wish there was a way to be directly paired with someone who they could ask questions to about program or just general university life, and I am committed to making that happen. To instill pride in the UVic engineering community, I will do so by bringing back engineering culture that was lost over COVID or over other years. There are multiple engineering traditions that I am excited to bring to the U of A campus, and I'm also looking forward to starting new traditions with all of you. Currently, the ESS doesn't host any events for minority students, such as women, BIPOC, LGBTQ+, or international students. I will work with the VP events and other council members to create these opportunities for events or networking groups or support groups so that people in all of these minority groups not only feel that they themselves are part of engineering, but that there are other people like them in engineering, which can sometimes feel like a non-super inclusive field. On that note, I want to heavily emphasize the importance of EDI, and I will work closely with the equity officer to make sure that all of our events and outreach and marketing towards the student body is accessible for all engineering students. And I will ensure that before the ESS makes any major decisions, that there are people of different minorities involved to make sure that our decisions are made in the best interest of every engineering student that we represent. I will also focus on developing student, faculty, and student industry relationships. As VPI, I started a brand new event, the Teaching Award event, where professors and students and the dean got to meet each other. This was met with great praise. I'm hosting it again in May. The ESS currently has a large industry night. I would like to expand on this by having specific discipline nights with profs, industry, clubs, and students. Finally, I've got the experience, the drive, and the commitment to improve the engineering and computer science experience for all students. Vote for Sarah Keegan to make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. We will move to Sam.
Just gonna get my laptop and stuff. It's on there.
Sorry, we've got a mic setup going here so you guys can hear, so it's gonna be a little.
Hello. It's work on it. Put on your.
Well, you can also just hold it, it'll be quicker.
Hello, does this work? You guys hear me very well? Can you do it well? Right. Sometimes that's what it just.
Yep.
All right, you guys hear me? All right, I'll just start. First of all, thank you everybody for coming out here. I know it's that was really difficult for people to find spare time, especially on like the middle of midterm season. So everything's happening all at once. So just thank you guys all for coming out here and for taking an interest in this as a president. So my name is Sam, and I'm running because I have a vision for the ESS. An ESS that is large in scale, membership, and most importantly, student impact. I'm going to give a short introduction about myself, and I'm going to give you guys a rundown of my main platform points, and ultimately how I'm going to implement you both as president. Now, these points include and mainly establishing an engineering makerspace, bringing back orientation, hosting a yearly ECS week, and finishing the CSE merger once and for all. I won't be able to get to everything in my platform, so make sure you guys take a look at that before you get vote. Ultimately, this will all just have the opportunity of taking advantage of the rapid growth we've been seeing in engineering and in ECS to just completely reshape how the ESS impacts students within engineering. So first off, a bit about myself. I'm a second-year software engineering student who's been involved in ESS for 2 years, first as secretary and now as vice president external. So I go to all the conferences, I deal with all the external organizations, I represent UVic on a national scale, at least in engineering, in terms of engineering. You raise the mic up a 50%. Oh, sorry. Yeah, can you guys hear me better? So I'm also incredibly involved with the ESS itself. I work outside my role as vice president external, which has allowed me to become deeply familiar with the ESS structure and everyone's roles on council. This gives me a good understanding of how to best support other members of council, and also while the president is primarily a supportive role, it's also the role of the captainship of the ESS. And we must have and implement a vision for the ESS. As aforementioned, can you guys hear better? Should we pause the time? Will we fix this? Okay. Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, sounds good. If you guys need, I can hold it as well. It's just that whenever I'm giving speeches, I have a tendency to shake because I have a tremor. I have a tremor in my hand, so it would be very distracting, I feel. Okay, it's good now?
Okay, awesome. Trying to find where I was. All right. What time are we at right now? Okay, 1:40. Sounds good. So I'll just start right now. All right. So as I was saying before, so sorry for the interruption. The president is the role of the captain for the ESS's ship. And they must have an implemented vision for the ESS. And as I mentioned, I have that vision of a bigger and better ESS that's going to better represent students and better serve students across campus. The main ways to materialize this are a makerspace, orientation, ECS week, and a CSC merger. Now, first and foremost thing that I'm going to do is get started on the makerspace. This is something we've been hearing about for so long, and this is something that this is the biggest opportunity that we have to impact engineering students and to improve engineering on campus that we've ever had, I feel, as the ESS. I'm going to be working with the faculty to establish this within 6 years, and I'm going to be trying to make it happen right in the boiler room as you enter the ELW so that everybody can see it, everybody can get a good idea of it, and so that ultimately people have a place to work on their projects, their capstones, and as a club space as well. My next priority is going to bring back an ESS RAN engineering orientation. At least 3 of the 4 students running for president here started in their second year, including myself. Now, why is that? I think a major reason for that is the fact that that was the year that we had orientation. The first orientation that we've had ran by the ESS in years, so long. It is so important that we bring this back so we can get students involved and so we get students caring about engineering culture on campus. Because with this, it will allow for more student engagement. People will have more of the sense of engineering camaraderie, which will also just in general be better for engineering on campus. It'll give the ESS more manpower and more resources to ultimately better serve students across campus if we have these extra volunteers. We need to impact them early on. Now, once people are going to be oriented at UVic, the next thing we'll have to look forward to is my next plan as the next part of my plan, which is ECS week. It's going to, in contrast to orientation, it's going to be more so of a frosh style thing, not as in like stealing signs, alcohol poisoning level frosh, like we had many years ago, but more so as the lines of UBC's E-Week, UT's Design Week, or like frosh week at Queens. Stuff like that happens across Canada and is an amazing way for engineering students to compete with each other over fun things like a scavenger hunt. There could be things like a chariot race, not with horses, but with people, with an engineered chariot, and other kinds of fun events. It's a really good way of bringing engineering culture to UVic, and that's something I really want to bring as a way of not just saying that we should have engineering culture, but actually implementing it and making it happen. Because at the end of the day, I'm a very results-oriented person. We need to make things happen. Now, finally, I plan to finish the CSE merger by immediately continuing with the faculty to get fees sorted out. I'll host a referendum and host a new constitution in the summer. And then ultimately, my goal is to have CSE students represented for the fall intake. The fall intake is a really important goal for me as president because I believe that the fall intake is going to be a really big turning point for the engineering student society, especially if I'm elected as president with all of these plans. Because the next fall is going to represent a sort of new generation and a new era with what we have. Right now, we've been having an insane amount of interest in the ESS already. And we'll have our orientation to be able to get even more interest. And ultimately, it will help us usher in a new era for ourselves. We already have rapid growth and we're no longer limited by interest within the ESS, which is so insane because once we have more interest and more people will be able to do more and we'll be able to have more resources to do things. I mean, in the long future, we might be able to even have things like 2 Triple-E's a semester. We might be able to have national hackathons and national conferences, or even a renovated jam factory to do whatever we want with. We could put whatever we want in there because we own that space. And ultimately, if you elect me as president, then we'll be able to implement this new golden age with the ESS by having all of these long-term recurring events to ultimately change the ESS and make everything better. Thank you so much. No worries. I get it. It's fine.
This is going to be a nightmare. You guys can hear when we talk into this, right? Okay, cool. All I said was thank you, Sam, and we will head over to Kevin.
Right.
Hello, can everyone hear me? All right. So, my name's Kevin George Matthew. I'm pretty sure you've seen my platform and think that I don't have a plan for the upcoming election. But I'll start off by telling you my journey through UVic. I started off UVic as a computer science student, and the first thing I noticed about engineering student society is that computer science students can't vote. I mean, they're not engineers, but they're still part of the engineering student society. And then I couldn't vote for my friend in first year when he was in his elections. And that put a thought in my head. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into software engineering and then do something later on. So as time passed by, I thought my friend would, go for the elections at some point, but he didn't. And then I thought, you know what? Why not just go for presidency myself? And right now, I'm in my 4th year in software engineering. And I feel like the main thing that disconnects most people in the ESS is the fact that we have a lot of computer science students working for the ESS, like my friend here, Jobin, and a lot of other people. And the thing is, they can't vote for any person. So I think the first thing that I would like to do as a president is merge the CSE students so they can actually vote for their friends and be a part of the ESS. Second, I feel like the main thing that most engineering students lack is a sense of communication. We're not really social people. Engineers are mostly introverts who really don't have time to do anything, including having a decent dinner. So I feel like most events should be based off of that aspect of engineers. So instead of having like events where everyone just comes as a group, we should have events that tailor to this introverted nature of engineers and have people connect as pairs and then slowly make a group event based off of that. And I feel like most people don't have time during the midterm season. Like right now, I can only see like 10 people in the classroom right now. And I don't know about Zoom. Zoom's much more convenient. So I'm assuming there's like 20 people right now. So I would prefer to have pump up as much events as I can during the first month and maybe till the week before reading break so that everyone can take part in the events. I don't think the events that take place after reading break really matter because most of the people won't be able to join it. And other than that, I feel like one of the other problems that students face is that they don't know what's going on. They know some stuff that happens in the ESS through Instagram. The ESS Facebook group page is not really updated that often. So I feel like we need to get all the social media platforms up to date on a daily basis. And secondly, I feel like we should talk to all the other engineering clubs, like the Bike Slabs Club. I used to be part of Bike Slabs. I used to be part of the Biomed Club. But at some point, I couldn't keep track of what's going on. I feel like the ESS should partner up with all the other clubs and host events or like post about these events so that all the engineering students can take part. They could also partner up with other clubs that aren't engineering related so that engineering students can also connect with other people other than engineers. We don't want to have a small group of people, a small group of engineers just talking to each other. We want to be social. We want to talk to other people in the group. So I think that's one thing that I will focus on. Just making sure that the Engineering Student Society partners up with clubs all over UVic so that students such as me who can't go for club day because of classes or something can actually know about what's going on campus. What else? I don't have any experience running the ESS like the other candidates here. So as a leader and as an engineer, what I would do is I would actually consult with all the people that I know in the ESS for ways to stimulate my idea. Basically, I would just give them what I want to do. For example, connect with the clubs and whatever. And then I would let them figure out what to do. Because as a leader, I think you should rely more on your followers and friends rather than on yourself to do all the whole task of finding out what to do. Yeah, and that's about it. My name's Kevin George Matthew.
Thanks, Kevin. We will head to our last candidate, Sumikta. So just let me know when you're ready. And
Okay, 1 second. Hi, I'm Samyukta and I'm a second-year electrical engineering student. I'm currently wrapping up my term as equity officer on the ESS Council, and prior to that, I was a member of the first-year council. So through my continued involvement, I've not only gained a clear understanding of the ESS's structure and processes, I've also been heavily involved in assessing and improving them. So as equity officer, what was presented to me as my role was creating the incident response form and then forming the student EDI committee to deal with those issues. But I never got any responses, so I was essentially left with nothing to do. So I have taken the initiative over the past year to develop the equity officer role into one that is well-defined and set up for success for the future person with essentially no guidance. This includes serving as the undergraduate representative on the faculty's EDI committee, where I would present my own ideas, such as implementing EDI training for TAs and advocate on behalf of students to them, where I develop strong relations with faculty members as well as the dean, and I'm confident to continue advocating. I've organized surveys and planned a town hall event that should be coming next term to better understand the perspective of the greater ECS community outside of just the subset of people that are involved in the ESS. And I've taken that information, created documents, created FAQs to address these concerns. I've incorporated sustainability into my role, which is something no one's looked at before. I've focused on a lot of outreach initiatives with High Tech U especially, and guided the director of outreach people over the past few terms. I've also represented UVic at 4 conferences where I've formed really strong relationships with other people, which have helped me with my role. And importantly, similar to the role of the president, I collaborate individually with members when assessing and developing roles from an EDI and sustainability perspective. So I have a strong understanding of each role's functionality and interactions. On top of that, I've also been personally involved in many roles, such as planning the EDA event for the first time, almost completely not even being there, attending meetings for the VP internal, as well as the VP external, being the head delegate and chair of the selection committee for conference, looking at policy relating to my role, helping with the VP comms on the website and introducing the link tree. I've also had many one-on-one meetings with the president on my own initiative, just asking questions, trying to get a better understanding of how things are run. So overall, I think I really have the knowledge, capability, and desire to be the president of the ESS. For my platform, I have 3 main points that are sort of tiered and sort of depend on each other. So firstly, I think we need to restructure and reorganize the ESS. So this includes especially the transition period, having a proper transition document, having frequent one-on-one meetings between the president and each member of the society, as well as forming strong connections between incoming and outgoing members. As well, I would like to have more collaboration between council members within smaller groups just to have more productive outcomes. For example, like the VP internal, external, equity officer, and director of outreach all focus on advocacy. So this could allow us to focus more on bigger goals in smaller groups. As well, I would like to focus a lot on the integration of the first year council, as well as execs and DALs, especially because these are likely to be our future leaders. So introducing them to the society's processes, members, assigning them specific roles, and allowing them to explore their interests within the ESS, which will allow them a smooth transition to any future role, which will help us build a strong foundation for the future of the ESS. So sort of this restructuring reorganization will allow us to expand the ESS to be an organization that represents and supports all of the ECS students. So this will include integrating CSE students as well as transfer students. So a lot of this will focus on getting input from students as well as outreach and orientation. These are big points to get people involved. So this involves, making conferences, events, services all more accessible and well-known, and tailoring our events and services to what people want. And then this will allow us to expand even further to collaborate with inter-school student societies and clubs on events, conferences, workshops, and charity fundraisers, such as collabing on EEE with other student unions, as well as like other bigger events, and working with clubs to organize workshops, study sessions, and reviews, so we can overall develop and expand the ESS. Thank you.
Hold on. Can you hear me? I hate this. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Thank you. We will now, for those of you who are new to join, we just heard from all of the candidates. They each presented their platforms for 5 minutes, and we are now going to open the floor to questions from the audience that will be asked to all the candidates. Also, if you are online and you have a question, you can either raise your hand to ask the question, or you can type it in the chat and I will read it out to all of the people. We do have a question online, unless somebody's here first. All right, so the question online for all the candidates, and the order for this will be starting with Sam, then Kevin, then Sumyakta, and then Sarah. So the question is, what are your concrete plans for interacting with the engineering and comp sci faculty and other university organizations, such as the Office of Student Life, to help forward the ESS's goal, even where these organizations may not be so engaged? Yes, and I will give you guys 2 minutes to answer this question, as it is a little bit complex.
Hello, can you guys hear me? All right, so that's a great question. I think that I have great concrete plans for this. I've already outlined it a bit in my speech, but orientation is definitely something we're going to be working with the faculty on, and especially the Office of Student Life, so we can get an ESS run orientation. We're going to have to be working with them no matter what for that, alongside a makerspace that's already a joint faculty and ESS effort. So doing that will allow us to. That's, I think, a pretty good option for that. Hello, like this? Okay, sorry. And with regards to other faculty organizations on campus, I think we have a lot of potential to work with the co-op office a bit more for things like industry night and finding sponsors. I think that we have a lot of opportunity, especially with the current dean, Mina. I've met with her a bunch of times along with Jess, and I can just say she is so in favor of the ESS, and we have so much great opportunity to work with them in the future. I know that they're willing to, they have the same goal as the ESS does in terms of expanding student interest at UVic. Especially because Mina's coming from UBCO, where she was the dean for a while, and she had to really rebuild it from nothing there, or she had to build it from nothing there, essentially. So I think that since Mina has a shared goal of the ESS of building the student interest and building engineering culture at UVic, I think that there's going to be a really good future for us. And I think that orientation and the makerspace and also ECS week is a great way, because I think we can work with the faculty on that and the Office of Student Life to get more interest there. And also just listening to the student body and council in general. The VP events would probably be handling a lot of this stuff alongside the VP internal, and the president would just be more so just supporting them in this role and facilitating. But those are my main concrete plans. Thanks for the question.
Could you repeat the question? All right. First of all, I think I don't know much about the organizations that are outside the faculty, to be honest. I would first compile a list of all organizations that need to be connected. And then I would try to organize events during the first few weeks of the fall term, not the spring term, not the summer term, because no one really no one really cares that much. It's the fall term that really matters. That's when everyone has a fresh start. And that's when we should focus on connecting students to these other organizations. So first step, get a list. Second step, plan events on the first month of September to connect with these organizations. And third step is to do follow-up events once in a while and send emails, automated emails to all the students that actually come for these events. So the main thing is there's no follow-up, there's no automation that's being done in this area. Like if I'm going for an event, there's no information being recorded of whether I actually came for this. For example, right now there's 10 people here. I don't even know if they're recording how many people come for this. I think we should actually go ahead and find out how many people attend events and basically email information on the events that students attend, so they feel like they're actually being cared for. Yeah, and that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Next is Samyuktha.
Hello. I don't know if I'm interpreting the question correctly, but like Sam mentioned, there will be big goals that we have that will involve the faculty and other organizations will be things like orientation and the makerspace. I think we've sort of reached a point where the faculty and especially the dean is very on board with the ESS and is very aligned with our goals are aligned. So I think the important thing is to be able to approach the dean or other faculty members that are like involved in what we're trying to do with like a specific goal and plans, and to sort of present like an organized, I don't know, like whatever we want to get out of it, and just make sure like that they understand exactly what we want from them and what we're trying to do. And I think that's where we've had like a disconnect or issues in the past. So I think that would be the important part.
Awesome. Thank you, Samyuktha. And we will go to Sarah.
Sorry, I'm just getting organized. So like the other candidates mentioned, like the dean is very supportive. I've met her at several of my faculty meetings and other meetings. So yeah, I think utilizing those relationships to our benefit will be important. Specifically, a way I want to do that is by increasing student-faculty relationships. Mina, the dean, is very encouraging of that and was delighted to attend my Teaching Award event and is looking forward to attending again in May. A specific thing I did with Mina for student-faculty relationships was she asked me if I'd be able to find engineering students who are involved in varsity athletics that she could talk to, because she wanted to highlight that engineering students also like do other things than just homework. So I found students who are involved in a bunch of different sports teams, and she was able to meet with them, and they had a photographer and a journalist. So I think things like that where we can involve the faculty directly would be great. I think we can involve the faculty and co-op office to support my idea of discipline-specific, like small industry nights. And also the faculty is obviously a very prominent like group. So I think they would be helpful to just further like spread the word about the ESS and our initiatives, because they are very supportive. And I would work hand in hand with the equity officer and the VP internal, and with that, what they do at their faculty meetings, monthly or bi-monthly, depending on who it is, and how they can work with the faculty to restructure EDI initiatives or how advocacy is done for students in general.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to try and alternate a little bit between the room and the Zoom questions. So I thought I saw a hand go up earlier. Abdul, I'll repeat the question to Zoom as well. I know you guys can't hear.
How would you propose the ESS raise that money? And how would you propose kind of seeing through the makerspace fund?
I also realize it is probably better if I just bring the mic to the person asking the question so I don't have to repeat it in other words. I'm sorry, Abdul.
The ESS, through preliminary conversations with the faculty about the Makerspace project, has kind of been told that we need to raise $450,000 over the next 5 years. What would be your plan as president to raise that amount of money and like follow through on the Makerspace motion over the next 5 years?
All right, we will give this question 2 minutes to answer. And we will be starting with Kevin. Oh, gotta give you the mic.
Damn. All right. I don't want to be the first one to answer this question, to be honest. Let's start off. What would I do? First of all, I would see how much cash flow the ESS generates every term or every year, and then see how long it would take based off of that. And then the deficit that won't be covered by the normal cash flow, I would try to get it through donors. So basically, I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of engineers who've graduated from UVic that actually, have benefited from studying from UVic. So I would actually get the lists from the donor society. There's a building outside campus, and then run an automated mail list and email all these donors. Hopefully, one or two, I mean, at least 10% would respond and give like 10 or $100 depending on how generous they are. So out of the thousands of engineers that graduate every year, I could compile a list of like 10,000, probably 100,000 engineers, and then probably generate around like 50,000 to $200,000 just through donors alone. And the next way would be to just ask the university for more funding, I guess. And also, you need to make sure the makerspace is actually like viable. Like I didn't know what a makerspace was before running for the elections. So we need to make sure that everyone knows what a makerspace is, and figure out how many people actually use that or are going to use that, and then present that to the UVic faculty. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. We will go to Samyuktha, right? Right?
Yeah. So I guess a big thing that I have mentioned in my platform is student input and basically getting an idea of what people want outside of the small subset of people that are actually like very involved in the ESS. So I think the first thing we would do is actually see what people think about this makerspace, what they want, what they're willing to like give for that. So based on that, we could consider, altering student fees, increasing them if that's something that people would be willing to do. But ultimately, like it's not a decision that I would make by myself or on the spot. It would have to be consulting all the council members, but especially the VP Finance, to look at our budget and see where we can take money from. I think a good place that we could consider is taking money from the SingCant Fund, especially because it's going to be over 5 years. It wouldn't be like a crazy amount each year. So that's one place we can look at. Yeah, like I said, student fees, reallocating money from conference budget or events budget, all of that might not be too much. And then another big thing is to look at sponsorships. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Samyuktha. We will go to Sarah.
Okay, so like the other candidates have mentioned, I think I would, first of all, like Samyuktha said, I know it's not a decision that I would just make myself. A few ideas, though, that I have are, of course, to reach out to industry and alumni and offer some sort of incentive that would like encourage the industry and alumni to donate their money. Often just emailing is with varying degrees of success. Another thing that I know, there's a local high school here that I've been chatting with the principal of, and they recently funded a makerspace for their school. And one of the ways they did that was through grants. And I had a bit of experience like helping them like sort of like look at what they were doing. So I think there's a lot of government grants available for these sorts of projects because it's great knowledge and great hands-on learning. I also think that reevaluating potentially the ESS budget would be a good idea and see like if we are able to pull some money from other locations, and of course just asking like the student body at large how important this is to them, and do they feel that like a $1 increase in fees or a certain amount of increase in fees would be valuable in their opinion for the money to go towards the makerspace. I think it's a very complex discussion and complex decision, but these are some of the ideas that I have been thinking of.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll go to Sam. Oh, sorry. Every time.
Thank you.
Where does the money come from? This is a classic question. I like this one, especially because I actually have a pretty decent plan for where we're going to get the money from. So, sorry, coming from cold here a bit, but first off, there's this thing called SYNCANT, the SYNCANT Fund or the SYNCANT Endowment Fund. Some of you who are with the ESS might know about it, but essentially it is a big fund that we scrape off of every year to get a bunch of, to essentially create a little fund to support student projects with. Anybody can apply to it if they have something that will benefit students on campus. And I think this is a really good source of money to get from this, because this is a fund that has like millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in it. This is how we get so much money off of it every semester for scrape off, but we give to clubs and then we give to student projects. So I think that if we either use that scrape off for the next 5 years, or if we take a little bit out of the fund with permission of the university, which I think they would probably be willing to do, I think that's a really good way of getting money for this project, because it is pretty much definitionally something that will benefit students. Furthermore, I think that engaging with local industry is a great way to do this. I know that conferences across Canada have to raise like over $100,000 in like a year or two to get these conferences to happen, and they do that through sponsorships. So I believe that sponsorships are a fantastic way of getting this money to be done. Of getting this money. Another way is to reach out to alumni and to work with the university to get some alumni grants. I know that at UBC, their engineering student center was funded largely by very generous donations from their alumni. So I think that if we have that network at UVic, which I know we do with the faculty, we'll be able to get that. As mentioned as well by the other candidate, we can get government grants for this thing. And overall, I think that we have really great options to get this funded. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. There was just a question on the chat. You can ask questions, but they must be to all 4 candidates. You can't ask a question just to one candidate. But the next person on the list, the question from Zoom was, if you were able to highlight only one key aspect of your platform, what would it be? And we will be starting with Samyuktha for this question. And I will give each candidate 2 minutes to answer.
Hello. Okay, so for me, I would focus on the restructuring and reorganization of the ESS. Although this may not seem like the most important thing, especially to people who are not involved directly, it's necessary for it to happen in order for us to achieve the other more, I guess, impactful things. Right now, the ESS's issue is not a lack of ideas or interest or creativity. It's just a lack of follow through and actual, getting things done. Like I personally, my first term didn't have much to do because I didn't have that guidance. I didn't have the information in my transition document. So to me, that's what's really important, focusing on creating like connections between the outgoing council members, incoming council members, making sure people are set up even before they start their term. Like essentially once they're elected, making sure they know what they're doing, they're set up. And this will basically allow us to get started immediately, being as productive as we can, and having that sort of like proper setup will allow us to achieve all the other important things like outreach, orientation, clubs, events, whatever. Like that is the basis for it. So for me, that's the most important thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Samyuktha. We will go to Sarah, I think.
Yeah. I have to agree. I think that like the foundation of any organization is important so that like we can grow, and like of course it doesn't like look that exciting to talk about like making sure that there's like the support for each role within the ESS, or like Samyuktha mentioned the previous documents and transition documents and previous council to help like guidance. But I think in order to have effective events and outreach and ESS on campus presence, I think the ESS needs to have a very strong core and foundation. So I would encourage teamwork between all levels of the ESS, encouraging exec and council to work more closely. I think right now there's a big like gap between like how often exec and council work together depending on the roles. I would look at restructuring and like changing some of the priorities of roles and making them more defined so that the people that have those roles can spend their time actually accomplishing their goals rather than sort of trying to figure out like what to do in the first place. I would also focus on like having regular meetings with members like council, exec, and DAOs to sort of chat and figure out like what can I do like as the president to help like lead their role in the direction that is best suited for the ESS and tie it to other roles so they have support. So yeah, the foundation and organization of the ESS so that we can have super cool events and relationships with faculty and industry.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Just to repeat it for you guys, because I know you can't see it on Zoom. The question is, if you were able to highlight only one key aspect of your platform, what would it be? And we are going to Sam.
Hello. So I think that the key aspect of my platform that I would highlight is really just taking advantage of the momentum that we currently have within the ESS. Because as mentioned before, we are growing so rapidly as an organization that we really need to adapt to it. And so I think this is the guiding principle that would really help us move forward as an organization. I mean, for example, we had to move SGM from the ELW lobby into this room because we had too many people. It was completely full. And I think that with this kind of momentum, I think if we really focus on this key aspect by sort of restructuring within the ESS, and so by giving more opportunities for volunteers, such as more defined DAO roles, or having opportunities for volunteering with things like orientation to serve as an orientation leader, giving people a pathway to be more involved at the higher level with the ESS is a great way of getting more involvement and taking advantage of this increased interest. Furthermore, I think that if we take advantage of this, then we're going to be able to better serve students overall. And yeah, I think it's as simple as that, honestly, just taking advantage of that.
Okay, yeah. So, one key aspect I would focus on. Let's see. My opinion, this makerspace stuff would take like a while to actually get going. If I were to think about one key aspect in my campaign, I would talk to the first year Kevin. And in the eyes of the first year Kevin, the one thing that he would like would be that's the computer science students and the engineering students be one. That is, give computer science students the ability to vote for their candidates that they like, instead of making them be treated like outcasts and not being able to vote, even though they're on the faculty of engineering. Yeah, that's about it. That's the one key aspect that I would like to change.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Do people from this room have questions? Yeah. I'll bring this over. That way I don't have to repeat it.
All right, so my question is that there are opinions within some sections of students that the ESS is just an organization for like a small group of like, say, outgoing or influential students, and often international or like minority students are often left out. So how will you ensure that ESS events under your jurisdiction will reach out to students who are usually like left out or can't reach to any of these events? Thank you.
Awesome. We are starting with Sarah now, I believe. And I will give each candidate 2 minutes to answer this question.
Before I start, just because it was a little tricky to hear, can I clarify the question?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What I heard was like, how will I ensure that the ESS events reach like students sort of like of the minority groups, like international students, was the key one I heard mentioned.
Yeah, he says thumbs up.
That's good. Okay. So as I mentioned during my little 5-minute spiel, this is actually something that is one of my key priorities as president, is hosting these events. I've noticed that the ESS doesn't have events for minority groups, and throughout the several conferences that I've attended representing UVic, I've chatted with other VP internals and other council members from other schools and heard that they host like a woman in engineering or an international student event or support groups. And I think that having these specific events is a very good idea to just like have this group of people be able to meet each other. And something else that I mentioned in my like 5-minute introduction was that before the ESS makes any like large decisions about like changing anything or even about like the finalized plans for an event, I want to make sure that there is someone from like each of these minority groups that I mentioned. So like women, BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and international students are just the obvious ones that I thought of, but I know there's more. I want someone from each of these groups to be involved to make sure that the event is accessible for all students of the minority and that it is like easily accessible for them to attend, and that the like EDI representation is fair for everyone involved. I don't want any engineering or computer science student to be discouraged from attending an event because they feel like they don't fit in. And that's something I really want to work us on with focus specific events, and then just having minority people always be a contact point before the ESS makes plans for any larger events.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Next is Sam.
Hello. Thank you so much for this question. I completely agree that it is a total core of hardcore engineering students that run the show within the ESS. And I agree that we should fix this. And I think that's a big part of my campaign is to fix this, because I think we need to move into a large scale organization. And if we move into, as we move into a large, like the steps to take to move into this large scale organization to include these students is to first and foremost expand the scale of our events and not make them smaller events. I think we need to make them bigger rather than smaller, because if they're bigger events, then they're going to be more diverse. And I think we encourage a wider diverse range of people to attend our events and to be organizing our events, then we're going to be able to see more engagement with the student body. I think bringing back orientation is another way of doing this. I think that if we have orientation, then we'll be able to get students and have that camaraderie early on, not just and as we get people involved with orientation leaders, people will be able to look up to these orientation leaders that are helping these new first years and think, hey, I want to do that as well. And this will help us expand, because I think overall, just restructuring the organization overall to like, and just to better sort of represent a larger student body and to just sort of represent these a larger student organization is the best way of moving forward. And just keeping in mind this as president, because the president itself cannot do this. What they can't make big sweeping changes. But what they can do is they can encourage changes. They can introduce things that the council will do, and they can overall sort of encourage these events with the new council and to lead them forward with this idea in mind. And I think that leading council forward with this priority is just in general a great way of encouraging this sort of diversity on council. And also more council events and more events for ESS people that are not just for council, but for, sorry, last minute, to like sort of have more events for anybody involved, all the volunteers, not just for council or just for the executive and stuff like that. Yeah.
Am I next? All right. So first of all, ignore my name. I'm probably the most eligible person to answer this question because I'm brown and I'm international. So you can't have bigger events and you can't have more events to encourage people to come to more events, to, these events. Most of the time when you have ECS events, you have the same people coming to the same events. You don't have more different type of people or anything like that. The first step is what I've outlined in my campaign that I just made right now. That was to actually talk to other clubs. There's Indian clubs like Umang, there's Vietnamese clubs, and there's LGBTQ clubs. ESS has to partner up with them and then talk to the engineering students in these clubs. And then use software. You need to figure out who all are coming to the events and follow up on them. Not everyone's going to respond to those emails, but percentage matters. If 20% of different people respond to your email and you get 20% different people each time you have a new event, you can track and figure out what's going on, what you're doing right. And this is the engineering process that we all know and love. First year students might not know so much, but this is basically it. You make a lot of mistakes, you learn from them, and you reiterate. And that's what I'm going to do. I'll try out a lot of new stuff, like, partnering up with a bunch of different clubs, and then basically trying to bring out introverts. You can't force anyone to come out for events. You need to try out new tactics to bring them out and then see if it works and then go from there. All right, that's about it.
Thanks, Kevin. And then last is Samyukta.
Could I hear the question again?
Oh, yes.
It was how to ensure that ESS events reach minority students.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about events specifically?
Are we talking about events?
Because I thought it was just ESS stuff specifically. I mean, it's generally.
repeat the question.
Sure, Samyukta. So the question is how, if you were president, how would you ensure that ESS events and like in your jurisdiction and like everything under ESS can actually reach out to minority students and students who usually don't come up to these events or can't usually reach up to these events? Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Was that clear?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll just wait for Jess to get back.
You're good to go.
Okay, so as the equity officer, this is something that I have spent a lot of time thinking about. It is a pretty big task. It's not as easy to just like say, yeah, we'll like try to get people to come out. So things that I have done is I've made surveys to get student input, you know, with like, I don't know, some sort of incentive so people will like actually answer it, to get an idea of like what kind of people are we dealing with and what kind of events do they want to see and what is limiting their involvement in the ESS and events. So this is like pretty like useful direct information to be able to like use to like either introduce different types of events or alter our events to be more inclusive. That's one thing. I've also been like, I have discussed with the council and like with talking with like BP events about having like multicultural events or events specifically for minorities, to encourage like involvement on like a smaller scale that's not like as big of a, like maybe not as intimidating of like a group. And as well, I think another important thing is to have like to collaborate with like clubs, because a lot of clubs have events that are more like, well, they'll be smaller and also will be more specific for things. So we can work with clubs to like connect people to events and services that they want to work with, whether that be like actual events or like, I don't know, like workshops or like sessions, things like that. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's what I want to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Samyukta. Next on my list, I have a question from Zoom from Ruja. The question is, what ideas do you have to improve the communication between the ESS, the student community, and the engineering faculty?
Jess?
Yes, Sarah?
How much longer is this going? Like, it's fine. I'm just wondering.
We said we would leave about
I
40.
just don't remember when we started at
We
the.
said we would leave about 45 to 60 minutes for questions from the audience, which has us ending in about 15 minutes to half an hour, depending on how many questions we have.
Sounds good.
I'll repeat the question. Also, Sarah, I believe you're starting.
I started last time, but
Right. Who's starting then? Sam is starting, my bad. But I'll repeat the question. What ideas do you have to improve the communication between ESS, the student community, and the engineering faculty? There was a similar question to this before, so if it's okay, I will limit the answers for this one to 1 minute. If that's okay with everybody. Oh, I thought I passed this to you.
Thank you. First thing I do is something that I already started as Vice President External. I want to have an engineering Discord that's ran by and for the ESS, not just the ECS Discord, but one specifically to advertise our events and to get input from the student body with, because most engineering students use Discord, quite frankly, and we use Slack, which is good for internal communication, but bad for external communication. This is something I started as VP External, despite it being more of a VP Communications role. I've since passed it on to them, but it's something that I really want to encourage as president. Another thing that I want to do is to increase our social media presence, not just on Instagram, but also moving towards LinkedIn a bit more. Maybe we could get a Twitter account. I don't know if that'll actually be that effective, but having us officially look into having better options for this kind of thing. Having more posters around campus, I think, would help as well. And specifically with regards to increasing communication between the student body and the faculty, I think having surveys and working with student clubs directly a bit more will be a good way of increasing the communication between the faculty and the student body. Also by emphasizing the role of the student representatives and increasing our collaboration, because we don't really work, only the VP internal works with the discipline representatives. And I want to make that more of an ESS general thing rather than just a VP internal thing.
Yeah, I guess a similar question was posed before, so I'll give a short answer. Basically, to increase the communication in general, engineers and introverts. So I would try to develop some kind of anonymized platform that we could use so that people could put in their honest opinions about how they feel about the faculty, how they feel about ESS, and then use like AI to figure out which comments are let's just say, appropriate to use. I'm pretty sure if you anonymize something, there's going to be a lot of stupid stuff that's going to be said. Anyways, when you're in the 21st century, you need to use 21st century methods. And I think we should be using more of those. All right.
Thank you, guys. Sorry, I guess this question could have used a little bit more time, but it's too late now. We'll go to Samyukta.
So similar to what I've mentioned, basically it always comes back to getting student input, getting feedback from the students. So like I think Sam mentioned, we do have discipline reps who are in charge of like each specific discipline. So maybe using each of these people to like actually connect with their discipline and getting feedback and they can then relay that information to the VP internal, who is in charge of actually communicating with the faculty and like advocating on behalf of them and like actually making those changes. As far as I'm concerned right now, like the VP internal doesn't have like, there's not like that like communication going on, like the VP internal represents students, but there isn't like that flow of communication. So having that like structured like information flow, I think would be a good idea to have like the communication between students, the ESS, and the faculty.
Awesome. Thanks. We can go to Sarah.
Okay, so as the VP internal, I am in contact with the discipline reps, and they reach out to me typically after their monthly discipline faculty meetings and just let me know like what's going on. Generally, it's nothing too exciting, so I don't normally raise the concerns to council. It's just sort of like the updates of what's going on. But I do think discipline reps have been a great way to sort of have like an inner eye into what's happening in each of the disciplines. I would also like to design student surveys with faculty. One student survey that I designed with faculty this year was about the course experience survey. And we are working on like redesigning the questions to make it a better tool that better accomplishes its goal. I'd also like to improve our social media presence, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, more posters, more emails. The newsletter has been very good too, and just increase the general ESS on campus presence.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah and everybody. Did anybody from the room have a question? Yes, Abdul. And also after Abdul's question, if it's okay, I'm going to add myself to the question list for next time we go for the room. Oh, hold on. I have to bring this over to you.
This is a pretty simple question. What is your leadership style? You're going to be president of a team of, I don't know, 50 active volunteers, I think, if you count everybody up. How are you going to be a leader? And what is your leadership style? And please use examples of like times you've been a leader and where your style has shown.
Awesome. We are starting with Kevin, and I will give everybody 2 minutes to answer this question.
Damn. I'm gonna be a dictator. I'm just gonna rule over all my volunteers. Yeah, that was a joke. Anyways, my leadership style, based on the projects that I've done through coursework and club projects, is mostly like a leadership style that involves taking advice from my followers or like friends in the group. So if I were to uh, go about doing something, let's say increasing the unity among engineering students, I would like put a poll upon the volunteers, get out all the different ideas there is, and then figure out which one's the best to implement and the shortest to implement, and start off like that. I would also I also tend to like communicate with all my members just to get a space of how they feel about certain decisions I make. And I also tend to be a bit impatient, and I think that's a good aspect, because you can't really wait for a long time to wait on someone to think of a good way to solve a problem. You need to rush things, especially in engineering, and I think that's a good quality. And I also tend to focus on the big picture rather than small things. As long as we can get something big done and not stress about the finer details, I think we can get a lot of momentum. And that's what I mostly focus on. And I think that's why you should vote for me. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. We will go to Samyukta.
Hello. So I think I would describe my leadership style as being very like involved. I think I do have a bad sort of habit of trying to do everything myself, and I've learned from that over the years. But I think it is really important to still be actively involved in each member's like whatever they're doing, and like making sure that they know that they can contact you and communicate with you, and that you're there every step of the way, but you're not the one actually doing thing. To me, that's really important, because when I started, I felt like I had not much guidance. So having someone, like I guess even before you start on council, to like sort of sit down with you and like go through all your roles, develop goals, and to have that constant checkup consistently throughout your role, so that they feel like they know what they're doing, and you also feel like everyone knows what they're doing, for everything to sort of go smoothly. And I guess a similar sort of example would be like I've managed like a yearbook committee before, and that's sort of similar, where there's a bunch of different sort of groups working on different things, all working to like the same goal. And so that would be just like working individually with each member or each little group, and making sure that like everything goes how it should be, and making sure that you end up with like a cohesive result. That's all.
Awesome. Thanks, Samyukta. We will go to Sarah.
I am a very active and involved leader. When I was the first year rep, I chaired and was the president of the first year council. I really led by example and emphasized on supporting all of my first year council members rather than just like instructing them what to do. The first year council members like would choose roles. So for example, someone would want to do like the advertising, and someone else would be in charge of venue, and people would all have their different jobs, and I would check in with them like how things were going as we were like leading up to an event, for example, or we would make student surveys, and I would help like come up with the questions that we would ask the first years to figure out like how student life was going. I really care about always being able for additional support and help if needed, and I would have frequent check-ins with the first year council members. I also think it's very important to have very clear communication about timelines or priorities and what is like the most important thing for the role or for like the organization as a whole. And I lead by that too. I like to set out like the sort of bare bones, like what must be met first, and then we expand more as we can. I'm very reasonable with my expectations and don't like overload myself or other members. And while I am a very like flexible and happy to help and provide additional support leader, I also do hold people accountable in a very kind, nice way. But if someone is struggling to accomplish their role, then I ask that like they approach me before like the deadline's passed, and we are able to together come up with a solution so then they stay on track and the team as an organization stays on track too.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll go to Sam.
Thank you. I would say that I have a active leadership style, but while still being supportive and I really want to emphasize communication as a leader. I think that communication is the number one thing that makes a leader, and the number one thing that makes or breaks a team. So as a leader, I have always tried to make sure that I'm checking in on the people that I'm leading. I've really learned a lot about how to be a leader with my time at the ESS. At the beginning, I was just a disorganized, crazy first year, and now I'm a slightly more organized, crazy second year with leadership experience as vice president external. So one example of this is at UVEC. So VP external is responsible for overseeing, but not in of itself running the University of Victoria engineering competition. And as I think that's the perfect role, I think it's a really good role to contrast with president, because as in that role, you're supposed to be sort of guiding along the competitions coordinator without doing everything yourself, without micromanaging. So as in that leadership position, I believe that I did a good job of sort of instructing what to do and how to do it, but not actually doing the stuff myself, and sort of sitting there as a backup in case they needed that support, and communicating with them and checking in on them constantly whenever they needed that support. And I think that's just something that the president should do all the time. And I think that my leadership style fits really well with that. The president should be a active leader in their ideas and their sort of steering the ship of the ESS, if you will, but while still acting to delegate their responsibilities to the council effectively and communicating with them, checking in on them all the time, and making sure that they can put out fires, send that email out at 3 a.m. or plan that event 2 hours in advance because they find out that it hasn't been done yet. And I think that my leadership style fits with that role very nicely.
Thanks, everybody. The next question will be from Zoom. So I have Asumir. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Their question is, what led you to believe the ESS needs a restructuring, and what specific actions do you plan on taking? We'll give 1 minute for this question because it was similar to before. Does that sound okay for you guys? I see head nods. Okay. We are starting with Samyukta? Okay.
Can I go? Okay, oh, sorry. So to me, I think we need to restructure, because I think I've sort of gone over this a bit, but we have a lot of goals and we have a lot of things that we want to get done, and it doesn't often get done because of the way we are organized and structured. Sorry, I'm just looking at the next part of that question. Okay, so I went over this, but focusing a lot on the transition period so that people are set up well even before they get started, to start immediately working towards goals instead of like trying to get set up, trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing, working in smaller groups within council towards common goals, which is just easier to do than working by yourself. And then especially turning the first year council execs and DALs into the future leaders by actually involving them in society's processes, assigning them specific roles, and like allowing them to explore their specific interests within the ESS. And this will allow them to like smoothly transition to like a future role, and like overall just like get them set up well for like the next council.
Awesome. Next is Sarah.
So I first started noticing that the ESS needed some restructuring when I noticed that a lot of the amazing newer roles, such as the outreach or equity officer, aren't super established in like what they should be doing. And I know that can be like very challenging and very confusing, like Samyukta has mentioned, and a lot of effort to put into that. And in general, transition docs are just missing segments. So to combat this, I would like to meet with every council and exec member, and I will sit down with them and go through the existing transition doc and figure out like what is there that they need and like what more do they need for their role and how could that like include restructuring. Maybe that involving an exec or a DAL or someone else in their role too, or maybe like some of their priorities have changed since the last time the transition doc was updated, which is sometimes like decade. So yeah, I want to meet with everyone at the beginning to get it all sorted out.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. I'll read it out again for you guys since you can't read it here. What led you to believe the ESS needs a restructuring, and what specific actions do you plan on taking?
I will do that. Thank you, Jess. Sorry for that. Sorry for not holding up. So what led me to believe this, first off, was when I first arrived on council, myself and a bunch of other people felt that it almost felt like it was there was a bit of a disconnect between the older and the newer members. It made it feel like it was a very small group of students that were running things, and that, which I still think is the case to an extent, where there's a very small group of engineering student society members that are doing everything and running everything. And I think that's why I think that the steps to move to rectify this is to really emphasize on inclusivity as president. So making sure that there are no events where only a small group of people are coming to it, and making sure that we're being very cognizant of this, and making sure that this isn't an issue going forward, constantly asking people about it, both new and old, and constantly reaching out to new members and including new members on events. So possibly reaching out to newer members, but possibly reaching out to individual students who haven't been involved with the ESS in the past, and reaching out to other groups, and also transition docs, obviously. But I'm just going to say, echoing what the other people have said, because I completely agree. My transition doc was like not updated forever. Thank you, Abdul. Sorry, don't mean to call out names.
All right. Second part of the question, I'm not going to answer that. Like, bro, just rewind the video or something. I don't know. First part, why? I had to literally work my ass off for most of the stuff that I've achieved in my co-op career and engineering career. I feel like the Engineering Student Society should actually do more to actually provide students with resources and knowledge on how to get a co-op, for example. Like, okay, you need to have projects, you need to network, how to network, stuff like that. And basically talking about half the stuff that's already in the Engineering Student Society. I didn't know half the stuff that was already being discussed here since I wasn't part of the Engineering Student Society, I guess. And that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Oh, next is me. I hope that's okay. So this is a question that actually came up in the very first presidential debate that I attended, and also in the first one that I was participating in. There's been a president here for 2 years. I was just wondering, what is one thing that you would do differently from the current president, and what is one thing that you would do similarly to the current president, and how they organize the ESS and how they lead the team and all that sort of stuff? If you could reflect a little bit on that. And I'll give 2 minutes to answer this question for everybody. And we are starting with, who are we starting with? Is it Kevin? Didn't you just finish? Who are we starting?
Is it not Sarah?
Is it Sarah?
I think I start.
Oh yeah, it is Sarah.
And sorry, 2 minutes you said again?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Okay. I think this is a pretty, unexpected question for me, at least. I have been on council both years that Jess has been president, so that's been exciting to work with her alongside all of that. One thing that I would do the same, I think just really like the semesterly check-ins are very helpful. I think that's a good way to like get people on track. Something I would like adopt about that is maybe like have it like before the term, like before we like start our roles, like end of March, beginning of April, once people are elected, I would have the meetings then, so that when we start in May, we can like hit the ground running and go with then. Something I would do differently than Jess would I guess like the timeline of the check-ins. And also at the same time, I'm not saying Jess doesn't do this, but I want to like be very involved in all of the council roles. So I want to like help the VP events like plan new events or help the VP comms like come up with our new ways of doing things. I have like new visions that I want to implement into the ESS, like the discipline specific industry nights or the events for minority students. And I want to like work with those VPs to accomplish those new things. Yeah, that's a hard question. I have no time to think about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Sam? Yeah, right? Yeah, it's a tough question. That's why I'm asking it, because we were put on the spot before and Abdul's had to answer this question twice now.
Thank you. I think I'm going to start off with what I do the same as Jess, because this is really easy for me, is I would just completely do everything I can to emulate Jess's leadership style. Specifically, I believe that the current president does a very, very fantastic job of supporting the roles of council without doing everything herself, at least not trying to, as in stepping in when people need it and encouraging people and just being very supportive and understanding and emphasizing communication above all, but while still sort of serving as a leader for council and while still sort of unifying us, being the glue I would say. I think something I would do differently is I would focus more on having a vision for the ESS and having a vision for the future of the ESS. Because I think that during the current president's time as president, a lot of it was spent during COVID when it was focused on survival. And I think right now we need to move away from our focus on survival and we need to move towards a focus on expansion and a focus on what can we do to make the ESS way better and way more impactful than what it is right now. So encouraging this vision, I'm not going to repeat it because I've said it so many times. You guys know what my vision is, bigger and better, but encouraging that vision and making sure that everybody on council is unified in what we want for the ESS. And so we can have this big picture idea and sort of keep that in mind for every single little decision that we make. And if we do that, I think that we have the potential to have an amazing council with amazing events led forward by a president that is able to unify them as the ship or as the captain. Thank you.
Who's next? All right. One thing that I wouldn't do compared to Jessica, I wouldn't be president for 2 years in a row. That's probably one thing I wouldn't do. Like, time is money. You know what I'm saying? Second thing, what I would do, I wouldn't do anything like Jessica. I like to think of everything in terms of first principles. Elon Musk likes to think in everything in terms of first principles. So basically start from the bare bones, figure out different leadership styles that's been used in different universities and try to find which one works best for you. Like, I think we should try a radically different approach to leadership and the techniques we use to involve students. And yeah, that's my take on this question.
Thank you. And we'll go to Samyuktha.
So something I would do the same is I think Jess is really good at being available and being supportive. So I think if there's any point where like I or any of the other council members or execs need something or want to have a chat or something, she's very good at being available and supportive and helpful for that, which I think is really important. Something that I think I would want to improve on is having, which sort of relates to that, is sort of similar, but it's like the other way around, where the president is the one to approach people and offer guidance or support more frequently, and especially in times of transitioning between years or terms or into a role. So just having more frequent and focused chats, discussing goals and discussing what's going on. Yeah, that's all.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. We will go to the next Zoom question. It is from Rudra. So also just being mindful of time here. We will probably do,
Is this going to be the last question?
we will probably do the current questions that are in Zoom. So we've got one from Rujo, one from Kai, and we'll do one more from the room in between those, if that's okay with you guys. I know we're going a little bit long after that, but I just want to give everybody on Zoom and in the room a chance to answer their final questions here. So the next question is, all candidates seem to have a certain vision for the ESS, but what approaches will they take to involve the student body into the decision-making process? Oh, thank you for telling me that the Zoom might close. I will work on fixing that while the first person answers the question. And the first person answering that is Sam. Do you want me to repeat the question? All candidates seem to have a certain vision for the ESS, but what approaches will they take to involve the student body into the decision-making process? We will give minute 30. Sam's suggesting a minute 30. This one is a little bit similar to a couple others, so we'll do minute and a half for this guy.
So involving with the student body is something that the ESS has been struggling with for a long time, and that's something that I really want to focus on as president. So I think that one way we can do this is by improving our communications at large. So the things that I've mentioned before, such as having an ESS Discord to communicate with the student body on that kind of thing. I think that email right now is by far the best way we have to communicate to the student body, because we can send it out to literally all of the engineering students. So I think that if we have, I think by using the email to that extent. Furthermore, the equity what a big part of the equity officer's role is to have surveys for the student body and to have. So I think that if we sort of implement these surveys in a if we sort of iterate through the design of these surveys and we do them more and more, we'll get better and better at them to involve the student body in these sort of decisions. I think that with major decisions, like when it comes to having the makerspace or like having the student body or like having the actual CSE student merger, we'll be having referendums for those so that and we have to pass that. So we already have bylaws for that in the Constitution, and we already have frameworks for which we can make these major changes for the student body. And I think that's a good way of interacting with the student body. I'm also a really big fan of the current plan for of the current plan for having a town hall. I think the town halls are chaotic and fun, and I think they're a great way of getting input from the student body and really just trying to make sure that these town halls, because the ESS is planning on having a town hall in, like, I believe it is within a couple months. So I think that if we have that town hall, that'll be, and encourage that, we'll have a great way of we'll be able to do that and get more input from the student body.
It kind of feels like seeing the Matrix trilogy. These questions are pretty much the same thing in different styles. But anyways, first thing I already told was using software to figure out what's really going on with student interactions. Second thing, anonymous platform. Third thing, I think we need to start using different tactics to make people actually engaged in the whole ESS thing, and actually use students' responses to certain questions to aid decision making in the ESS. And I think that's something that no one does. It's just a group of like 5 people or 10 people that actually make core decisions. They don't actually look at what other people think about the decisions they're going to make. So yeah.
We will go to Samyukta for next.
Yeah, so I think that involving the student body in itself is a big part of my vision. As Sam mentioned, a lot of things like the town hall and surveys that have been what I've been doing as equity officer. So both of those things are really good ways to get student input. The survey that I conducted did get a lot of like responses, and that was one more generally about EDI issues. But if we were to do something like that again for a specific, I don't know, like something we wanted to get input on, I think that would be a really good way. Similarly, a town hall for bigger issues is a great way to get student input and allow us to like sort of see where we can improve. And on top of that, like Sam mentioned, like it is a big part of the equity officer's role to be like looking into how to involve the student body. But I think with sort of the platform that I have set up, the goal is to like involve students on a large scale, like in the ESS, so that we're able to get their input through that and not having to reach out externally each time.
Awesome. And lastly, we'll go to Sarah.
And this is a minute and a half?
Yeah, a minute and a half.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to check because we hadn't done that before. So increasing student engagement is a big priority of mine. As I mentioned, I want to ensure that people from minorities are involved in all large decisions so that the decisions like don't just represent a small specific niche group of engineering students. As previously mentioned by the other candidates, student surveys are super important, and I want to work hand in hand with the equity officer and VPI on their roles, because I know both Samik and I created some student surveys last term or last year. A lot of mine were also done with the faculty, so like they're a bit different. I want to encourage students to attend weekly meetings to sort of find out what is happening in the ESS and be more involved, even if they don't feel ready to commit to a big time role. Another very effective way of communicating to students is chalk and talks. I ran the first year rep election in September, and I went to all the first year classes and told them to vote, and we had higher turnout in that first year rep election than in any previous council election ever even. So I think just telling people, getting the word out, and especially telling people in person is very, very effective. Same thing happened with the teaching award event. I sent out emails and asked people to speak, and we got a lot of nominations. So I think, yeah, emails, surveys, and just chatting with people, spreading the news is good.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Does anybody from the room have a last question? Okay, cool. We'll do Kai's first, and then I actually have one more question, but Kai's been waiting for a while. So we'll take Kai's Zoom question here. So the question is, as the CSE merger is already set to happen in September 2023, due to the hard work of previous individuals, what are your plans for ensuring its successful completion? And if there is a problem, what would be your main resources / approaches to resolve it to ensure the merger happens as soon as possible? Who are we starting with for that one? Who started the previous question? I'm losing track.
I was last, so
I think it's Kevin.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll repeat the question for you guys then. I'll give everybody 2 minutes. So as the CSE merger is already set to happen in September 2023 due to the hard work of previous individuals, what are your plans for ensuring its successful completion? And if there is a problem, what would be your main resource and approaches to resolve it to ensure the merger happens as soon as possible?
First of all, this merger's been taking place for a lot of time, for a long time. And if there's any repercussions, I don't know what to do. I'll be honest. As engineers, we face problems every other day. We just learn how to solve it on the spot. So right now, I can't give you any solutions without knowing firsthand what the problem is going to be. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Then it's Samikta.
Yeah, so as of right now, I think that it's, like Kevin said, it is difficult to predict what the problems will be. But I think it would be really important to get started on it as soon as possible, and working with like the current president and other people who have been involved for a long time to get a very good understanding of what needs to happen and what potentially could go wrong. To me, I think it's important, like before we get too far ahead, to look at, for one, if the CSE students are even interested in merging. So this is something I've mentioned before, but actually having like a survey, getting their input and making sure that they're okay with, the fee increase would be probably the biggest problem. Because if that's not something that they want, then this is like not even something we're, gonna have to consider. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing that I think is really important is like right now starting to like actually get the knowledge out about the CSC merger and make sure that CSC students understand what's happening and realize that they will be represented by the ESS. And something that I've sort of suggested, and I think that is a good idea to start with, is to allow CSC students to attend events such as E-Day that we had that are low cost, to start now integrating them into the ESS and make them feel included. And in terms of problems, I think my main resources would be faculty, previous presidents, or like upper year ESS members that have been dealing with this for the past few years and have a lot of knowledge in it. And yeah, I think that would be it for me.
Awesome. And we will go to Sarah.
Okay, so before I would start as president, I would want to make a team with some people who would like help me in the case of like a problem or whatever. Because I think working through it as a team, we're going to have different ideas and be more likely to be able to resolve it. And then before we take over, I will set up a meeting with the students who have already worked towards the CSE merger with my team so that everyone is on the same page. So we all like know what has happened, what needs to happen, and the timeline of that. And similarly, I would set up the same style meeting with the faculty members that have been most highly involved with the merger, just to make sure that everyone like incoming also understands the implications of the CSE merger, because I know a lot of the likely new council or exec members may not know the details of what's going on. So I want to first make sure that everyone like directly involved within the ESS knows. And then I think it would be good to have like a presentation or just sort of like an infographic, and that we can email out to the CSC and the engineering students explaining like what will change and what will be the same, and like what this means for like their degree and their student representation moving forwards. My main resources, like I mentioned, would be the team of students who have already been working on the merger and the faculty, and then my new team of students, because we would be able to resolve any problems, like hopefully not, but I think it's always good to have that team and that group ready and have all the knowledge prepared and a plan for like what to do in case of an issue occurring.
Awesome. Thank you guys. If it's okay, I just want to ask one more question. Oh, you have a question? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Sam. I got confused.
Wow. Hashtag Jessica. Hello. So this is a major part of my campaign, so I put a lot of thought into this, thankfully. So the first thing I'm going to do is essentially just make sure it happens ASAP as soon as elected. So I want to make sure that we have a convention of everybody on council to flesh out what our new constitution will be, and a referendum question before the incoming council comes in, because if we can't do anything before the incoming council comes in, then I think it'll be a bit of a nightmare. So we need to have continuity with the current council and the people who have been working with this already. I'm in a group chat with people that have been working towards this already, so I'm able to use that as a Discord as well. I plan on also seeking input from the previous CSCU president, I believe. And also I have a extensive network of engineering societies as VPX. So I have really great connections to ask people about and to help people with that out. Essentially, my plan to make sure that everything happens is to get the constitution fleshed out and the referendum question done for September, so that incoming CSE students are part of the ESS officially by fall. And if that doesn't happen, because things will go wrong, because things always go wrong, I believe that a good approach would be to have them effectively integrated by fall. So even if, for example, the referendum doesn't get quorum because it's in the summer, I believe that we should be able to invite CSE students to all of our events and to include them in all of our advertising, and then make sure that it gets done by by the spring term. So effectively having that, because I think that it's extremely important that we have CSE students effectively part of the ESS by fall. So even if we're not technically represented by our constitution, I believe that if we still sort of invite them and include them within the ESS before that, it will make sure that everything is smooth. And of course, working with the faculty and just sort of making sure that, and hoping things don't go too wrong, because, hopefully it won't. I think it will go well.
Thanks, Sam. Again, I'm sorry. But we had one more audience question. Okay. That's okay. Your questions in one.
Hi, yeah. So I spent 2 years running one of the largest clubs on campus, and we found that one of our problems was it was really easy to talk about what we wanted to do. And then when it actually became time to do it, we could never find the planning or the logistics or the motivation. So I want everyone to pick one of your like key platform points and just talk in detail about what you're planning to do to make that happen.
Did we not have this question already?
We did actually cover this question at the start.
Okay. No, like I haven't talked like in detail, like if you're going to be structured with the ESS or the ESS. What? Okay. That's okay.
Yes, somebody did ask the question about like the key main point of your platform. But was there another question? Cool. Okay. If nobody else has a question, I have a question. And it'll be a short one. But yeah, last one. I feel bad putting myself last, but how do I word this? President is a big role. You're supporting everybody. There's always a lot on your agenda. There's always a lot of stuff you have to do. And I was just wondering if you could speak to how you will manage your time, your school, like all the stress that you'll have balancing the two of that, like balancing the workload you have for Prez and the workload you have in your personal life and academics. And if you have any plans for that, I'll give 1 minute to all of the candidates for this one. 2 minutes? 2 minutes. I'll give 2 minutes for everybody to answer this one. And we are starting with Samyukta, I believe.
Okay, the first thing I'll say is that, of course, president is a big role and you're going to have a lot of things on your plate at one time. But a good way to like sort of manage this is to make sure that you're setting up your council and your exec members and your DAOs well, so that you're not having to go back and like do their work for them, essentially. So starting off really well, like, I mean, say like if you're elected, I will have like the end of this term to like set myself and like council up for the following term. And I'm not in school right now, so I have a lot of time. So like setting people up initially before is gonna, so that they know exactly what they're doing, will, I mean, of course they'll still have, you know, like questions and things, but it will like set them up in a way that you're not having to go back and like take a lot of their work from them. So that's like one like management technique that I think could save you a lot of time and stress. And on top of that, I think like in terms of school, like, I mean, I don't really care. Like I could take a smaller like workload if I need to, in terms of that. But like for managing, I don't know, managing stress, like we're all engineering students, we're used to it. It'll be fine.
Awesome. Thanks, Samyukta. We'll go to Sarah.
Okay, so last year I took 6 courses. I did very well. I had the ESS, I was tutoring, and I was a member of the BMed club, and this was a lot, but I managed to do okay. So this year I'm planning on maybe taking like 5 courses so I'd have more time to devote to the ESS. One of my main techniques that I used last year was I had like designated ESS time. So like the days of the ESS meetings, like after the meeting, I would go and like do all my tasks for that week. So I like respond to all my emails and get emails sent out and like plans and posters or whatever for like the next thing that I was working on. I think that's very good. Like Samyukta mentioned, I think putting in a lot of time up front will be able to like save myself and the council and the ESS in general time later on. So I'm dedicated to having one-on-one meetings with all of the council and exec members and reviewing their roles and their goals, their personal goals and their goals in terms of like their role within the ESS. So within that, like most likely they will at least have most of their questions answered. And of course, I'd be open to questions and open to helping any of the ESS members with any of their jobs, but then everyone is sort of set up nicely. In general, I think I have very good time management. I devote my time to like the ESS or school or my other commitments that I'm doing. I may take less courses to accommodate for the increased role in the ESS, but I feel very confident in my time management skills in this regard.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. We'll go to Sam.
Hello. So, stress has become an integral part of my life. It has been for a long time. Even in high school, like in grade 12, I was taking like 6 AP classes while also being like class president and like president of like 3 different clubs. So it was a nightmare and I hated my life, but I've gotten used to it. And as a result, I have a lot of experience with trying to figure out how to manage my time. And I think that a key is organization. Now, I think that I've struggled with organization in the past a lot. And that's something that I've really worked on a lot, especially since starting with the ESS. And I've really figured out what I need to be organized with and what I don't need to be organized with. So first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making sure that I use both a calendar and a to-do list for literally everything and writing down literally everything that I can so that I'm not missing anything. I'm going to be constantly checking my emails so that I'm not going to be missing any important emails. And I'm going to be responding to things as soon as I possibly can. I'm going to be making sure that I have notifications for Slack on at all times, even at night, because I have a bad sleep schedule anyway, so it's fine. And making sure that I'm always available for council members, and overall making sure that I'm also taking time for myself and I'm assessing whether or not I'm happy or if I'm not happy. Because if I'm not happy, I get more stressed and then I get sick and then I want to die. It's terrible. So I think making sure that I'm assessing my own happiness is a very important thing to do with being president. And I'm also willing to make sacrifices for this. I'm honestly, I've made sacrifices in the past for the ESS, and I'm willing to put the ESS first, even in front of taking like a bunch of courses. I'm willing to take a reduced course load. I know in the past presidents have taken usually like 3 or 4 courses to deal with the workload because it's incredible. And I'm anticipating hell and more. And I'm willing to take a reduced course load for this because I'm really passionate about the ESS and I'm really passionate about what I think that we can do. And I'm willing to do what it takes to improve my time management and to work towards this and to put the ESS first to make sure I have the time for this and the mental energy.
I'm impressed, Sam. That was actually pretty good. All right. First of all, I've taken 6 courses, 4 of them group projects, and I've had a healthy social life. And I did pretty good on all 6 courses. So I think I can handle it. But the main point is vote for the GOAT. Meh. Anyways, what I want to say is don't vote for me. Vote for Sam. Compared to everyone who's spoken here today, I feel like Sam is the one who actually knows what's going on in the ESS and what actually can be done to improve the ESS from within. My one advice to Sam would be to try out new stuff and not copy everyone who's been in the ESS till date. And use software. I see that you have a software jacket on, and I feel like you would actually use more software in your leadership and help make the ESS better. And that's it.
Okay, thank you guys. Had a unique answer to that question. But yeah, that is all the time we have and more. Thank you to everybody for attending on Zoom. And thank you so much to all the candidates who participated today. They've been putting in a ton of work over the past, few days, honestly. It's been stressful the past couple of days and years, and however long they've been thinking about this, they've put in a lot of effort. So we can just give them all a huge round of applause for all the work they've done. What?
Well, just the fact that Zoom,
Oh yeah.
half of our candidates are on Zoom and on co-op right now, so they're not even here. So the fact that they're doing this and still very, very successfully campaigning and being here and still being involved with ESS is just incredible. And so I just like to say thank you to everybody that's come on Zoom and who's had to tolerate the technical difficulties, and to all the people, and also just to everybody that's come here as well. I said it before, but like, thank you guys so much for coming and being interested in the ESS. Like, honestly, I will be happy if any people here win. You can cut me off now. I'll just keep talking, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Sam took a couple seconds to wrap up, so I'll give everybody a little 30-second to wrap up. Yeah, 30 seconds to a minute to wrap up here.
Okay. I mean, my wrap up was pretty much covered in the last question, but yeah, to all my followers and all my friends, don't vote for me. Just vote for Sam.
What have that?
We will go to Samyukta for a little wrap up here.
Okay, I will just thank everyone for coming and listening. I think it's really hard to gauge who will be the best president based off this debate or even the campaign without knowing what actually goes on in the ESS and who does what. But I appreciate everyone coming here. You've seen my campaign, you've heard from me, and I would appreciate if you voted for me. And if any of that was like not convincing enough, if you feel that you have or still do butcher my name, you will be forgiven if you vote for me. So thank you.
I would like to echo Samyukta's original statements that I think it's very hard to gauge who would be the president just based off of hearing from each of us for a few minutes. I think the other candidates are also very qualified. And I would also really appreciate you voting for me, but mostly please make sure you make an informed vote and please vote. We want high voter turnout. Yeah, so thank you for people for tuning in from Zoom or in person. And I enjoyed having the opportunity to explain some of my ideas and priorities if I were to be elected president. And if you have other questions, you can reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you again to all the candidates and for all the viewers. And feel free to reach out to the candidates or the ESS or any of us if you have questions, and more information will be going out on how to vote. Voting opens, what day is it? Voting opens Wednesday night, so Thursday morning at 12 a.m. and it will be closed